Okay, hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first of our July overview and scrutiny meetings. Welcome to everyone in attendance and those people who I'm sure are watching online. First of all, apologies. I think everyone's here.
There are none.
Yeah, everyone's here. Excellent. Item 2, appointment of substitute members. There are none again. Item 3, declarations of interest from members. Councillor Mannion.
Thank you, Chair. Just to declare that I am a trustee of the Mining Heritage Trust, and so if I do talk, I'll leave the meeting after I've spoken.
Two seconds, Councillor Morehouse, your microphone is off.
Sorry. Can I propose that we observe a minute's silence for Anne Widdicombe MP? She was a Kent MP for many years. I think it would be entirely respectful for us to stand and observe a minute's silence. Whatever our opinions of her opinions were, she was a public servant and she deserved a dignified and peaceful end, not the end that she suffered.
Second that.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Morehouse. Happy to do that. So if you can, please stand for a moment's silence. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so if there are no other declarations of interest, we'll move on to item 4, which is the minutes, to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 15th of June. Councillor Vincent.
Yeah, happy to propose those, Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Mamjan seconding. All those in favour of the minutes? Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, that takes us on to item 5, public speaking. So we are varying the arrangement slightly then to allow public speaking on item 6, which is Betsanger Country Park, and we've already spoken to those people who have registered to speak. I just want to remind everyone that the remit of this committee was after a motion that was passed at full council. Specifically, our remit was the part that said refer the issue of the viability and long-term sustainability of Betsanger Country Park to the council's overview and scrutiny committee for a detailed review. So it would be appreciated if the public speakers could try and focus on that bit, the viability and long-term sustainability. Although, if you vary from that, then I suppose that's your prerogative to use your 3 minutes as you wish. I will be quite strict tonight on the 3 minutes because we've got quite a few public speakers and we don't want to cut people off at the end of the list. So after your 3 minutes, I am going to stop you. So please, if you could work with me, that would be fantastic. And then Councillor Mannion, I'll bring you in at the end of those public speakers. So first person on my list is Adrian Sullivan. If you'd like to come up to the front, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Adrian Sullivan, Friends of Betsanger. Unless you had your head in the sand, you will be aware that there is a biodiversity crisis happening all over this planet. 73% of wildlife lost in the past 50 years. Okay, we can't be accountable for what happens elsewhere, but we can protect and look after what is on our own doorstep. Betshanger Country Park is of national importance for its wildlife. It's a huge asset to East Kent. Not just us saying this, NGOs that support us confirm this and say we have a jewel in our park that others can only dream of. So future plans for the sustainability of the park must also include sustainability of its wildlife. So let's talk sustainability. It's obvious that as things stand, the park doesn't have a sustainable future. The current model isn't working, as illustrated by heavy financial losses. A new vision is needed, a change of direction. Imagine an alternative. The park's wildlife is protected. It becomes a flagship nature destination. People coming to enjoy its iconic species and tranquil green spaces. There are nature trails, nature guides, quiet meditation areas, a beautiful garden, volunteers, art and photography exhibitions, art trails, and making use of the underused visitor centre. A special programme to support mental health, training and employment opportunities for 16 to 24-year-olds. All of this a natural partner to the current cycling, running, walking, and other physical activities that are so important to people's well-being. What about funding, you ask? Greater emphasis on the park's nature value could open a door, we believe, to a range of government green funding streams, also corporate sponsorship, and possibly philanthropic support and engagement. Much could also be learned from KCC on funding models for the 9 country parks they own and manage. A new vision, a new model is definitely the way forward. But what is also needed is clarity. It would be very helpful for the community to know, is the plan to sell the park? Would a community bid be looked on favourably by the owners? For if there is not clarity, then antagonism surely follows. This community needs clarity. These are some of the questions we need answers to this evening.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. Thank you very much. Next up, Jane Langstaff, if you could come to the front, please. Thank you very much.
I'm Jane Langstaff, ordinary member of the public. The soil at Betshanger Country Park is by its very nature unstable and contains toxic substances, including cadmium, radium and arsenic. Nationally permanent protection is being sought for former mining sites through the Colliery Spoil Biodiversity Initiative. Nature thrives on these sites, helping to stabilise the spoil and keep contaminants locked within the undisturbed soil. The BBC docudrama Toxic Town, based on real events, highlights the serious health risks associated with disturbing airborne colliery spoil dust, including investigations into cancers and birth defects, which cost Corby Council millions in compensation. We also know that locally, Cottington Court Farm, opposite the former Pithead site, had to destroy its entire dairy herd in the 1980s after horrific birth defects occurred in newborn calves. These defects were widely reported as being linked to colliery spoil dust blowing from Betshanger Pit on the prevailing wind and settling on grazing land, farmland, homes and gardens in the surrounding area. An out-of-court settlement by the National Coal Board followed and was well documented in the local press. Last year, local oncology teams asked us to report the identification of a significant cluster of cancer cases of the same type within a 2-mile radius of the former Betshanger colliery site to the Kent Public Health Observatory team for investigation. It's therefore vital that any future plans for Betshanger Country Park meet the standards expected of a country park and comply to 4 essential criteria: public health and safety, environmental protection, ecological protection and financial viability. You have the power to write and ask for the original 2013 covenant to be enforced, protecting our mining heritage, environment, ecology and public health. We need a freely accessible country park for the community, run by the community, just as so many other successful projects are in our resourceful and resilient town. Please support our constituents to bring the park back under public ownership so that the full ecological, historical and community potential of this unique and special place can be realised. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane. Next up, can I ask Simon Phillips to come to the front? Thank you very much.
Hello, councillors. I'm Simon Phillips and I'm also an ordinary member of the public. Bexhanger Country Park is an asset of enormous value to the local community in East Kent. This is partly because of its rare species of flora and fauna, such as the iconic purring turtle doves and its rare colony of beautiful lizard orchids. But crucially, it is also valued for the stories that wildlife and habitat regeneration can tell us about the East Kent community's resilience and regrowth following the closure of Bexhanger Pit in 1989. On 28th of April this year, 30 local people walked from Deal Tip to Collier's Gate across BCP's green edgelands. We weren't just there to enjoy the peace and tranquility, we were protesting Quinn Estate's unilateral closure of the Collier's Gate and ongoing inappropriate development of the former Pithead and Spoil Tip site. QE have since 2019 tried to develop BCP using a high-cost, high-risk business model. Including proposals for a surf lagoon and an expensive high-end hotel. These slightly surreal theme park style proposals, all hollow out the social history of the park and also damages its stunning wildlife and ecology. However, following DDC's intervention, the gate was reopened, temporarily resolving the issue of the local people's customary free access to the park. To me, this demonstrates that people-powered protest actually works. DDC could also support future proposals for a community buyout of the park, using legislation available from 30th of April this year. Under the new Community Empowerment Act, local communities have the right to buy ACVs, including green spaces, not just the right to bid, as was previously the case. They now have 12 months instead of 6 to raise the necessary funds, and there is also a dedicated government right to buy fund to which communities have access. Finally, as a retired gardener, I'd like to see the award-winning Green Seam Miners Garden finally installed in the park. Designed by graduates of Hadlow College, Beth Williams and Charles Towner, the garden won Best in Show ever at Hampton Court Flower Show in 2015. Quinn Estates bought the site in 2019. Say no more. They intended the garden to be a garden of hope. That's it. Okay, thank you. They intended the garden to be a garden of hope, using green technologies and pioneer plantings to say something meaningful and sustainable about the regeneration and revitalisation of the whole local community, while accepting that we now live in a post-industrial landscape. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much, Simon. Next up, Christine Oliver, if you could make your way to the front. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and Councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. As a local resident, Bexhanger Country Park has been an important part of my day-to-day life since it came into existence. I have memories of walking my daughters around the park in their pram, of them learning to ride their bikes, happy days playing in the playground, as well as jogging, walking our dogs, enjoying the bird life and the views of the countryside. My daughters are both now adults. And that brings into focus the importance of maintaining this valuable green and leisure space for the public benefit and protecting it for future generations. Like many, I was devastated when the park was sold privately and wondered how on earth that could be allowed, given the levels of public investment that had been put into it and the promise of it being an asset for the local community. Along with others, I campaigned against Quinn's wholly inappropriate development plans. I welcomed the planning conditions, hugely important concessions for biodiversity, which must continue to be upheld. Private ownership of the park has proven to be financially unviable, demonstrated by the fact that it's now up for sale. Quinn Estates are a private company. The profit imperative is baked in. They've made plenty of money by flipping the other half of the site after securing planning permission for housing. When profit margins drop, the public loses out, as evidenced by the Collier's Gate issue referred to already, and the pitifully short opening hours during the pandemic. Now it's on the market, DDC has an opportunity to right an egregious wrong and ensure the park remains a community asset for local people in perpetuity. The park is a designated asset of community value. There is a consortium looking into a community bid for the park, with great deal of community support and goodwill towards it. I work for an environmental funder and have a decade working in environmental philanthropy. I've offered my expertise and support to the consortium to source funding opportunities and provide access to a large network of philanthropic funders, both heritage and environmental. That's not the only model. Gedling Country Park is also a former colliery spoil site, owned by Gedling Borough Council and managed by a community-led group with charitable status. If DDC or KCC were minded to, they could purchase and operate the park in this manner. There's also the issue of the significant philanthropic investment in the mining museum and how this will fare within a private purchase. Country parks don't have to make a profit. They exist for the public benefit. They should be not-for-profit and self-sustaining, where any surplus is ploughed back in. In short, DDC has the opportunity to put right a wrong, and this committee's review should give serious regard to the future of the park being put back into the hands of the community in as open and transparent process as possible. I implore you to take this opportunity to provide what was always intended to be a community legacy
Christine.
and return it to the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Councillor Peter Findlay. If you can make your way to the front.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to support the Friends of Betshanger's alternative vision. Firstly, the gardeners amongst you will know that what you can grow successfully depends on the soil type you have. Betshanger was a slag heap with virtually no soil at all and a very hostile environment for growing plants. Nature, however, is a much better gardener than we are, and gradually over about the last 40 or so years, pioneering, specialised and unique plants, such as lichens, colonised the site. The habitat, however, is fragile, and if you drive a lorry over it, you will destroy it and lose it forever. This will result in a colossal biodiversity net loss that the council cannot afford. Secondly, there is a report associated with green spaces noting that Dover Town is blessed with many sites where wildlife and well-being can be experienced. Kersney Abbey, Connaught Park, Russell Gardens, for example. Walmer has the popular Hawks Hill and the vegetated foreshore along to Kingsdown. Deal, on the other hand, fared very poorly. The best site for birds and some peace in Deal is actually the cemetery at Hamilton Road. Betshanger Park, however, is right next door to the people of Deal, and this brings me to my third point, the alternative vision. As the conservation officer at Gaze and Salts Nature Reserve in Sandwich, I help organise the weekly tasks for the volunteers who manage the reserve. In 2026 so far, for the first 6 months, the numbers of volunteers on every Wednesday morning averaged nearly 20. This equates to 60 hours contribution per week, or 1.5 full-time equivalent. The reserve gets good reviews. It's supported by the councils, and we monitor the increase in biodiversity. With Friends of Betshanger having so many keen members, there is no reason why a successful and sufficient volunteer force could not be encouraged at Betshanger. Volunteer teams are popular in Deal, such as those at Sandown Castle and the Captain's Garden. There is an appetite for opportunities to volunteer for this kind of work and education in the countryside, as this shows. Thank you. Finally, I hope the committee can support the development of the park as an asset of community value, and for the community to construct a bid for the purchase and running of the park. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Peter. Next up then on our list is Jerry Carter. If you'd like to make your way to the front.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. I took my son up to the park when he was young, 2 years old, and he's now 22. So since that time, the park, I think, has become more and more of a valuable asset for the local area and also for the world. We're all connected. So most of what I was going to say has been said. So I'm going to instead just recite one line from a famous song. Hope that the copyright doesn't get as a problem. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot with a pink hotel, a boutique, and a swinging hotspot. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got until it's gone? They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Next on our list is Ian Redding. If you'd like to make your way to the front.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The closures of much of the UK's mining and manufacturing industries in the 1980s left a huge legacy of towns, villages and their communities with a void, which rather than being filled by regeneration and new opportunities, created decay and deprivation. After Betshanger pit was closed, it left 2 sites that were too poisoned for redevelopment and which lay untouched until the introduction of regional development agencies in the late 1990s and approaches to support these communities through a period of change that could be developed across the whole of the UK. Reflecting upon the recognised dangers of pit heads and slag heaps, solutions agreed through CEDA for Betshanger were for light industrial use around the pit head and a country park around the slag heap, all part of containing the dangers. Wise decisions at the time and reflected through the local plan for Dover in the years that followed. These solutions are just as relevant and right today, irrespective of deviations that we have seen in developments at the pithead site and in proposals for the country park. None of us is yet certain of the health risks that these may have created so far, but we all have a responsibility to ensure we create no more and utilise the country park solely for the purpose that best suits what it is. However, we must also recognise that it does not exist in a vacuum. The area in which the park sits was once sea, then sea marsh, and now protected by a grid of drainage channels. But the Environment Agency predictions are that global warming will return it all to the sea again, possibly as early as 2040. The slag heap is the only higher ground from Sandwich to North Deal, from Northbourne and Great Mungem to the golf courses in Sandwich Bay. All locations, communities, businesses, landowners, etc., are all interreliant within the area and all endangered by poisonous sites that could cause an environmental catastrophe. A quick internet search shows that pollution from coal mining can take many centuries to clear. Particularly coastal communities are at risk because the transport of fine particles from the spoil is one of the primary pollutants in causing pollution in coastal zones. Tidal floods inundate spoil with saline water, which helps accelerate pollutant release, as well as affecting the integrity of the spoil heap itself. This is a Zone 3 flooding area, after all, that we're talking about. Pollutants will have highest impacts in special scientific areas and those areas protecting habitats and species at risk. Spoil dumped closest to the coastline typically has greater likelihood of causing problems. So whilst the solution for the areas must protect these two existing sites, that does not mean that other ideas for the area are wrong. Many ideas are important for the local economy, for jobs, for tourism, for creating an environmental hub that works together. But it needs the right facilities put into the right places, not necessarily on this site. Consequently, it's our belief the best solution can be created by looking at the entire area that is in this flood area together.
Thank you very much, Ian.
Okay.
You can stop there. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Next up, Jill Carter, if you want to make your way to the front. Thank you very much.
Good evening, councillors. I'm just an ordinary person. I'm not an expert about the future of the park, but I do know that it's an incredibly important place for the whole community. And I know a lot of people who love it and use it and ask, what is sustainability really? If something has been built and created at enormous cost, then why would we just lose all of that? That is not sustainable. I have chosen to read a poem about Betshanger. Betshanger. Below the earth, the miners yearn for the light, for the green of the trees and gold of the morning, for the quiet of place and space. It is not theirs. They tunnel and hack and send that black treasure back to a dying landscape of filthy richness. It is not theirs. Until one day, the wheel stops turning, the machine falls silent, the spoil slips into sleep, and the birds return and the trees spring up, and water creases in the sunlight and the air is clean. Festival of quiet, jubilant chorus of song and colour, the green and the gold. It should have been theirs, but for now it is ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Next up is I for Fogarty from Friends of North Deal. If you could make your way to the front.
Good evening. We at FOND, Friends of North Deal, thank you for this opportunity to speak for the communities of North Deal, nearly contiguous neighbours to Betshanger Country Park, and subject to effect and affect from higher ground. In a flat area, Betshanger, is our mountain. In time and space, its effluent, its pollution, and most importantly, its benefits impact us. We see it as an opportunity. Our children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren could have employment and inspiration for education and advancement. Our spokespeople here remind you of your legal rights, obligations, threats and expenditure. This is their job and they do it well. Please be guided by it. At Fond, we do things. We renovated the benches from the Royal Hotel to Sandown Castle. We help people speak out who are unable to do so. We try to be good neighbours. We are deprived of green areas in North Deal. And given the huge increase in the size and population of Deal and environs, we hope and trust that Betshanger will be our local park and green area, walking from North Wall and South Wall by public footpaths across a couple of fields and in through Collier's Gate. But, and there's always a but, we do like good neighbours to be neighbourly with. We would like to know why Betshanger is not connected to the public sewer. What is the status of the branch line to the railway main line? It has appeared both connected and unconnected in maps in very recent years. We cannot work with lack of transparency. You can help us there. We can think of many ways to maintain a light footfall on Betshanger Mountain. Who would want to be pile driving into a wet spoil heap? It is a mining site. Let that be a centre of interest. Don't just extract rent. Build on this with imagination for the long term. Look how exactly this problem is tackled in other parts of the world. A branch line of the British Museum, like the Louvre in North France, would be very handy. Okay, and an alternative Chelsea would also be very handy. Diversify, yes, but revisit the original greening investment ideas. Fond stands by to help, but we haven't won the lottery and we understand the financial imperatives. We as a neighbourhood are invested in the long term. Don't kill that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our last speaker is Paula Young. If you want to come to the front, Paula.
Good evening, my name is Paula Young and I'm a public speaker. I'm here because I care deeply about Betshanger Country Park. To many people, it may simply be a park, but to me and to countless others in our community, it's something far more precious. Betshanger is a place where nature thrives. It is home to an incredible variety of wildlife, including rare and protected species, as well as countless birds, insects, wildflowers, fungi, and animals that depend on this special habitat. Once these habitats are damaged or lost, they cannot simply be recreated. Nature needs space, and Betshanger provides exactly that. This park is also a sanctuary for people. Every day it welcomes walkers, cyclists, families, dog owners, runners, wildlife enthusiasts, and people simply need somewhere peaceful to clear their minds. It's somewhere we can enjoy low cost or even free outdoor activities. At a time when so many people are struggling with the cost of living and with their mental health, having access to safe, beautiful green spaces has never been more important. The value of Betshanger cannot be measured purely in financial terms. Its true value lies in the well-being it brings to thousands of local residents every year. Green spaces are disappearing rapidly. And once they have gone, they are gone forever. We understand that homes and development are sometimes necessary, but they should never come at the expense of irreplaceable natural spaces. The community of Deal, Sholden and the surrounding villages do not have another park like Betshanger. It is unique. It is one of the few places where people can escape traffic noise and the pressures of everyday life while experiencing nature on their doorstep. I ask Dover District Council to think not just about today, but about future generations. What kind of legacy do we want to leave? One where every piece of land has been built on, or one where our children and grandchildren can see and hear wildlife, explore woodland and enjoy open countryside. Protecting Betsanga is not standing in the way of progress. It is ensuring that progress includes protecting our environment, our wildlife and our quality of life. Please recognise the enormous environmental, social and health benefits that the park provides. Thank you. Once these precious habitats are lost, they cannot simply be replaced. I urge you to protect this remarkable place and to ensure it remains a haven for wildlife and for the people who cherish it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Paula. Finally then, Councillor Mannion, if you'd like to come to the front to speak on item 6.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, ladies and gentlemen, I've been lucky to be involved with Betsanga Park for over 20 years. I think it was 2003 when I first started. I've been very lucky again in that time to work with a number of great community activists. I think of the late Anne Den, Derek Wanstall, are also officers here, the late Bryn Hill. So a lot of people have spent a lot of time over time, and I'd just like to pay tribute to that. And even today, we still have a number of great volunteers. I can see one of them up the back. I won't embarrass you tonight, Jim, but thank you also for the work that you do with the mining museum. So it's a great facility. I also, I suppose, have to pay tribute to the English Coalfield program brought in by the Labor government back in 1997, and that was really, I suppose, part of it. So it's been a great journey, but we are where we are. It's not where we expected to be 20 years ago, but we are where we are. So, Chairman, you and your members, please take account of where we are, and also the people, what they've said today, and I'm sure you'll come up with some great ideas, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mannion. Okay, that's the end of our public speaking then. Thank you very much to everyone who registered and came along to speak. I was slightly concerned on Wednesday night when it was just one person, so I'm glad that has frantically increased. So thank you very much for taking the time. That takes us on to item 6 then, which is Betsanga Country Park. And we have Tyler here from Betsanga Country Park and Hugh from Queen Estates, who will be able to answer our questions, I'm sure. Did you want to speak first? Feel free to respond to members of the public or give us a little bit of an introduction.
Well, I think probably most of the answers to some of those questions will come out in the questions and answers when you begin to interrogate where we are. But I think probably an initial comment from me, and I'd like to thank everyone for their presentations. It's interesting to hear, and it's things we've heard previously. But as you know, we bought the site in 2019 from the administrators because Hadlow had failed. And when we walked into that park in 2019, it was an absolute mess. Nothing was working, nothing was maintained. The habitats weren't looked after, the biodiversity was decreasing, and the habitats that supported some of that really sensitive ecology was disappearing because it would have been overtaken by hawthorn, etc. The visitor centre was a bomb site. They'd spent £10 million trying to deliver something, and who knows where £10 million went, because when we walked into it, it was absolutely disgusting. The sports clubs that were using it at the time were not happy. The education usage was very low. And generally, it was a bit of a nightmare that we needed to try and turn around. Now, if we hadn't have bought that site in 2019, I have absolutely no doubt that it would not be open today. It would be closed. There were only 2 people who were interested in buying that site. One was the guys that were owed money from Hadlow College and wanted to buy it to strip its assets and get their money back, and us. And we were the only people that really had a viable way of making sure that that park stayed open. Now, we've owned it for 7 years. There's no legal obligation for us to keep that park open. And the guys are right who spoke. It is a loss-making park at the moment, and we tried to address that with the planning applications that I think were a lot less onerous than possibly was made out at the time. They were only really on about 8% of the entire park, so it would have accommodated the biodiversity. But since we've taken it on, there are thousands of children being educated on that site. There are hundreds of thousands of visitors that visit that park, use it for sport, use it for events. There are all sorts of different people that can now go and enjoy the park, as these guys are saying. So when criticism is levelled at us that we aren't doing the things that we should do on the park, all of the things that are being mentioned in those speeches, we are actually doing, and we have been doing, and there's no legal obligation for us to do them. You know, we put in, well, Mark puts in, you know, £2,000 a week into that park, hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, trying to make sure that that park is kept open. During COVID, I was a bit, we didn't keep it open long enough. We could have closed it. Most normal people would have closed that park. And most normal people, when they realised the losses that were coming out of that park, that we didn't realise at the time, because Hadlow didn't disclose it, would have shut it probably 2 weeks after actually buying it. But as you sit here today, it's open. As you sit here today, there are children using it. I think we worked out we had this year, we've already had nearly 3,000 children go in there and get educated. The Mining Museum is open. We spent £3 million on that visitor centre. That was £3 million that came out of the Redrow deal. When we bought the park owed KCC £1 million, which is forgotten when everyone talks about how much we paid for the park. That debt has now been repaid. So it's very easy to get caught up in the things that we haven't done, but we have done them and we are continuing to do them. And nobody is more interested in the financial sustainability of that park than me. Because if it isn't, it's another £150,000 this year. What we need is a bit of sensibility, a lot less hysteria, and a sensible plan moving forwards. Now, yes, the park was put up for sale, but yes, it's been put up for sale previously. That's what we do as a company. We come in, we get planning, we improve, we sell it to the people that are good at what we got planning for. Unfortunately, that was scuppered because everyone decided to object and get Natural England involved. And unfortunately, the market changed. So now we can't deliver the Sea Hive and we can't deliver the hotel. Those permissions are still in place and are in place for 7 years. So we continue to investigate those uses and other uses on the park that will bring that financial sustainability. But as it stands right now, parting comment before questions, it is in an exceptional state right now compared to where it was. Its biodiversity is significantly better than where it was. The money that it owes to KCC has been paid back, and we continue to keep it open, and we continue to allow the community, not just the ecology, to benefit from that site. But yeah, welcome any questions, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, Hugh. So before I go to councillors then, just because we're here to talk about the issue of viability and long-term sustainability, so the Surf Lagoon and the hotel, do you see then the viability or the long-term sustainability including something or things on the scale of those planning applications or those themselves still? How do you see it going? Does it need something like that in your view?
It's going to need something. It's not necessarily going to need those two uses. It was very useful, despite it costing a fortune and coming to nothing, to go through the process of actually getting those permissions, despite the objections, because it allowed us to really understand where Natural England were, where Kent Wildlife Trust were, etc. So, you know, we regularly now have contact with Natural England about the lizard orchids. Kent Wildlife Trust, we pay to come down and look at the ecology in the various areas that we've maintaining and are enhancing. Costs us hundreds of thousands of pounds to actually do and put those habitats in place. I don't know if you've seen the report, but as I've said, the biodiversity, which isn't the quantum of ecology, but the diversity of the ecology, is exceptional at the moment. And that only happened because of what we're doing. However, we are going to need to find some different uses. And yes, it may be ecology driven. We've got an excellent consultant that works with us at the moment who's investigating it. We've investigated biodiversity net gain and being able to sell credits. And we still talk to the Sea Hive. And obviously the sales pack includes the hotel. It's just ideas, and it's going to be a very iterative process as we move forwards. But the priority is to keep the park open, try and limit the losses, and sensibly come up with an alternative plan that almost definitely will involve more planning. But it won't necessarily be exactly what we've got planning for now. But usefully, the hotel and the Sea Hive have planning for 7 years, which is quite unusual. but that was dictated to us by Natural England, who we're working with to try and get strategies where we can move the lizard orchids without it being quite as onerous. There's no doubt there's significantly more lizard orchids on that site than there was in 2019, but there's a lot of them. So they're obviously doing very well, and we're obviously doing something right, because the management of the habitats is vital for the lizard orchids. Just leaving them means they'll get overtaken by hawthorns, etc., which we are doing, and we are protecting those open mosaic habitats, which everyone has mentioned are very, very valuable, at our cost, at no one else's cost, and without anyone volunteering to help us.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Mamjan, and then councillors, if you want to indicate, I will start writing a list.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to know, do you have an ecology report that has measured the increase in biodiversity since you overtook Betshanger Park, and preferably not one that was your friend? And I say this only because we were at an open meeting where the ecology person claimed, and you both said that you had a relationship and you went well back, otherwise I wouldn't have mentioned it.
Well, the last report was done by Kent Wildlife Trust. I think they're called Adonis Blue is their private company. And they reported species that hadn't been seen or heard of for, as far as I'm aware, decades. So there is no doubt that the biodiversity is improving, and that it is verified by a third party, who these guys, I think, openly accept their opinion, because they are the Kent Wildlife Trust. Ultimately, it's just a private arm of Kent Wildlife Trust. It's called Adonis Blue, I believe, which is one of the butterflies.
So is there a written report?
Yes, I believe we submitted it as part of one of our planning conditions. So it's definitely been released, because it was mentioned in the press, I believe, as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parks.
Thank you, Chair. You said that you think the park needs something, whether it's the things that it's currently got planning for, or whether it be something else for it to be financially viable. Is that for it to be a profit-making enterprise, or is that to be, i.e., for it not to be loss-making for you, or is that to be for it to be viable for the sake of the upkeep of the park and for to maintain the improvements to the park that you've described that have happened since you took over the park in 2019?
It's going to have to make a profit to fund the areas that don't make a profit. So it will need to be a profitable park, yes.
Do you know if Gedling Borough Council makes a profit on Gedling Country Park?
I don't.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Vincent.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think I'd be interested in a kind of contrast, because I think a lot of the points made by members of the public are extremely valid, and I share their concerns about this, because, you know, declaring an interest in having two young children who also quite like visiting the park and getting filthy in the playground and going to the forest school, and you know, I have very fond memories of cycling there and trying to wedge my bike into Collier's Gate to try and get it in. My only complaint there is the gate is about an inch too narrow for me to comfortably get it through, but I won't rehearse that minor whinge. I suppose the serious question here is not really about how well loved and how important the ecology is here, because I think that's an area that we all largely agree on. I'd like to just draw upon what we've heard from Hugh there, because it speaks to me of a kind of a sincere kind of investment in time and energy in improving the biodiversity of the park, and the tone is one of a longer term vision for it. Now, I'd contrast that with it being up for sale, where we haven't got any idea who might be in the running for buying it, and you know, clearly, if we only had two bidders last time round in a fire sale after Hadlow drove their particular enterprise straight off a cliff, then we've now got I think a much more challenging environment from an investment perspective, whether it be through construction costs or just overheads of running a business. So I suppose I have really two key questions, I suppose, is I'd like just through you, Chair, just to respond to that contrast, which is a sort of a passion for the future, but actually it's up for sale. And then I think secondly, I'd love to hear kind of what advice has been given on who might be in the running to buy it, without giving us any kind of commercial confidences, because I suppose, only limited confidence that a future buyer will perhaps have the same sort of passion for the things that we know locally are of great value to the community than we've heard this evening.
Where to start? So we own the park with partners who have invested an enormous amount of money into the project. Now, it was with a view to getting planning and then selling the park with those uses. Now, they are not local like myself and Mark. They're in London and they're horrified what has happened at the park in terms of us spending so much on getting planning and continuing to invest money into the park to keep it open when we don't have to. They would gladly shut the park, and they tell me regularly that they would gladly shut the park. It is their right to test the market to see if there's anyone else out there who would like to take the park on. The shame being that if we had succeeded in bringing the hotel and the wave park forward, I think we would have been able to achieve all of the objectives that everyone's talked about tonight, both financial and ecological. So routinely, and it has been on the market previously, not with JLL, they're allowed to go out there and find out if there's anyone that would like to buy the park. Now, again, as you say, in 2019, they weren't exactly queuing out the door. KCC didn't want it. Dover didn't want it. In fact, they probably wanted it, but obviously financially, it's a huge undertaking. And most of the people that have looked at it see it as a liability rather than any sort of proper profit centre. That said, it has been a useful exercise because a couple of parties who specialise in certain activities have seen the benefit that could come and work alongside what we do at the park now, including the ecology. So we haven't necessarily got anyone that wants to buy it outright, but we do have parties who are looking into it to take out the partners who want to close it and work with us to diversify the uses such that it becomes profitable and we can pay for all the things that we need to pay for to benefit the community, the children, the sports people and the ecology and the museum and the miners and everybody else that uses the park. So it's unusual for a private company to have to come to a public meeting and answer questions like this, but with a view to being transparent and obviously having a good relationship with the council, it's only fair to say that yes, we have some ideas and we have some people that are interested, but it's not going to happen overnight. You know, these things, the fact it's taken 7 years to get here shouldn't be surprising, really. It is such a complicated piece of land. It's 240 acres. It has 10, 15 different uses. Just the liability from a health and safety perspective, ignoring the hysteria about the soil, is, you know, that soil was the soil that you were running around in and still continues to sit underneath the playground. If it was as bad as they're saying, then trust me, it would have been shut down a long, long time ago. So there is an awful lot of thought, an awful lot of effort, and an awful lot of money that is going into trying to find a solution to keep the park open. And even if somebody did buy it, they couldn't do anything else on it because it hasn't got any planning other than to be used as a country park and a hotel and a surf lagoon. So I think it's trusting in the planning permissions that it's currently got. If someone was going to come in and do something different, they would have to go for planning. They would be caught by the Homes England restriction, which does allow eco lodges, just before everyone starts jumping up and down about accommodation on site. But I said it's going to be quite iterative and quite long, and the management structure moving forwards that we've learned, Tyler's amazing, she works tirelessly down there, needs work. But again, it's massively complicated and expensive. The goal is to keep it open and establish a permanent long-term solution, be that with somebody else running it with us, or us continuing to run it but with different uses.
Thank you. That's really helpful to understand. The reason I'm asking, I suppose, is because I wanted to understand kind of what the motivation was behind the sale. And I mean, I'm not expecting you to necessarily respond to this, Chairman, but it does feel from the way he's described the process, that it's more of a search for new investors than a search for a new owner. That helpfully perhaps explains the contrast between the passion that we hear this evening and the kind of perhaps the impatience of sort of financial backers. I think the sale process is one that I would just ask a follow-up on, because I'd be interested to understand. I mean, we heard from one of the speakers earlier about the changes in legislation earlier this year around the asset of community value process and the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Act, which came forward for Royal Assent in April. That extends these processes a bit. I'd be interested just to get Hugh's take on that process and whether or not is it an opportunity to flush out an alternative path forward that is a constructive way to get community groups together to buy something like Betsanger Country Park, or does it pose a threat to the sale of the park through a more conventional private sale that might have a bearing on the people that you're speaking with as potential new investors?
It's a bit of a red herring, the community value, asset of community value. It just allows the community to be involved in the sales process, if you like, and have the opportunity to bid. There's no real obligation for us, even if they turned up with £50 million, for us to sell it to whoever turns up. We're still fully in control of what we do. The sales process hasn't necessarily turned up somebody that wants to buy it outright, as I said. And the investment model doesn't require us to go through the asset of community value process, because you can get an investor without selling the land. We would obviously gladly talk to anyone who wanted to approach JLL or us if they came up with a good, honest, solid plan and a number that wasn't insulting. But just to be clear, we've invested millions upon millions into this site. As I said, the visitor centre cost £2 million on its own. KCC, we paid £1 million to. Homes England, I'm not sure how much we paid them, but we've got an enormous amount of money invested in this park. The other thing I would say is that even if Dover, Kent, various groups came and wanted to run the park, it is so difficult. You need money invested in that park on a daily basis. You can't just come in and have it. No, look, we'll get some wardens. We'll have a yoga spa and it'll all be fine. Day one, there's money needed. End of every month, there's wages needed. Tens of thousands of pounds are needed to pay the staff every single month. We had a treatment plant that broke last month, cost us best part of £10,000, if not more, and more. You can tell me that. But we kept the park open so that we could have the weddings, so that the schools to come in. I don't know if anyone saw, there's tankers coming in and out of that on a sort of
every day,
every single day. It cost us a fortune to do that. The idea that you're just going to come up with a sort of a community offer and we're going to wander in there and suddenly it's all going to be fine is just a fallacy. Yeah, I don't know if any of these people who care so much about the park, and I greatly respect that, have actually been out and talked to the people that use the park, the community groups, the sports clubs, Deal Try, various cycling clubs. How many schools do we have use? 10, 20, 30 schools use our...
What, for trips and
Yeah.
things more than...
Yeah, maybe it's 40, 50 schools. Has anyone actually that's thinking of putting this community bid together actually gone out and spoken to those schools? We speak to them all the time. We speak to Deal Try all the time, and what's the cycling club? VC Deal. All of which hated Hadlow in 2019, and now regularly have come back. Even the cycling club was thinking of going and using Lyd, wasn't it? Yeah. They came back to use us. We've got Henry and the goats down there. Has anyone spoken to Henry? Everyone loves Henry and his goats. The therapy goats, we call them now, because a lot of disadvantaged children and adults come in and it's tear jerking. We have trailblazers down there that bring disadvantaged children in and train them up. Has anyone spoken to trailblazers outside of us? We've got a child who's now being trained at the Lakes that we also own, who was one of the first trailblazers kids. He's now working at the Lakes having been there and been incapable of being able to get to school, is now working full time at our lakes. And these are the people that, as a community, if you want to have a serious bid, you're going to need to go and talk to all of them and understand what is actually involved in running this park. It's not a bunch of ecology that just needs looking after. It's a community, and it's a community use that costs a fortune. Rates, insurance, power, electricity. You know, with the miners will tell you it's really hard. And at the moment, everybody is suffering in the community because nobody's got much disposable income. So our footfall is way down. Even the footfall on the lakes with the fishing is way down. So trying to put that together is really, really hard. So if people do want to look at this asset of community value bid, I would advise all of you, whoever gets approached, to do some serious due diligence. This is not a small undertaking, because you don't just pay the money and it's all fine. You pay the money and you have to run the park. You have to pay the wages. You have to keep the lights on. You have to have events that you keep needing to bring to the park to pay those wages. And that takes a long time. It's taken us 7 years to get where we are now. And it's losing significantly less money than it did for Hadlow. Sorry, I went a bit off piece there. But...
That's right, Hugh. Thank you for that. I have met the goats and I have met trailblazers.
For anyone that hasn't met the goats, I can recommend the pygmy goats at Betsanger Park.
So just to carry on that point then, you provided us with this note from Richard. I'm not entirely sure who he is or what his role is, but maybe you could clarify that. And I think this is being made public. And it talks in here about collaboration is the way forward, which I agree with, and I think the groups that you've referenced would probably agree with that. So are you working with some of the groups like Friends of Betsanger, or do you plan to? What's the goal there?
Well, I said back in this chamber, actually, when we were going for planning for Sea Hive and for the hotel, that nobody had ever approached me, myself or Mark or anyone, and offered any help. No one had ever approached us and offered us any money. I'm pretty sure that a lot of the people that go in there enjoy the park, don't spend a penny in it. They walk in free of charge, they use all the facilities, and they leave because for some reason they dislike us. Now that is not helping the financial and the ecological sustainability of that park, you know? So we would gladly talk to anyone. I mean, people will tell you, Mark Quinn and myself are extremely sociable people. We're more than, I've met councillors and I've been to see councillors a lot. We're more than willing to talk. You know, we need ideas, but more importantly, we need help. You know, with the staff was at one point 30 to 40, and now we're down to 9 or 10, just because things are so tight at the moment. You know, we've had to lay people off, and these are people that wouldn't have had to be laid off if we were able to deliver the hotel and the wave park. But those are the implications of, I'm going to use that word again, hysteria. It doesn't help the community, doesn't help the ecology, it doesn't help this district. It needs to be measured, it needs to be sensible, and it needs to be financially planned, which is what we did. We had a goal, and unfortunately, because of the delays, that hotel and that wave park were lost for now. But we need to find something similar, not necessarily exactly the same on the same places, but there needs to be a diversification. What was the other question? There was another question in there, sorry.
That was me.
That was you. Oh, Richard Taylor-Jones.
Yeah, Richard. Who is Richard? Because we've got a name, but we don't have.
Yeah. So Richard, I think
just because I'm curious, not because I'm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, full disclosure is myself and Mark went to Sir Roger Manwood's with Richard, and our paths split immeasurably, and he became a BBC videographer, heavily involved in conservation and ecology, and he lives in Deal, and he came and started advising us because his knowledge of the ecology and the various species in and around Betsanger was far greater than ours, and because he was an old friend, he easily approached us, obviously, and he's been invaluable, really, in making us always think, what are we doing? You know, we've created these new habitats at the park that now have this biodiversity that it never had before. He shouts at us when we think about doing something wrong. I mean, historically, despite him being a childhood friend, he originally objected to the Sea Hive and the hotel. which we weren't best pleased with, knowing him as long as we have. But he's incredibly passionate about his ecology, and he owns a gallery in Deal, and he'll gladly talk to anyone that walks in and wants to discuss ecology and paintings. So, but he's helping us, and he's looked into biodiversity net gain credits. But again, interestingly, when you speak to people about what you might be able to do at the park, and they look at the vitriol that's been levelled at the park, they don't want anything to do with it. So this constant park bashing, Quinn Estates bashing, doesn't help at all. As I said, focus on where we were compared to 2019, and if we can make the same gains in the next 7 years, whoever does it will be in a fantastic place.
Yeah, thank you. So on that then, we met Councillor Mills, Councillor Vincent, and I met with some groups. If we can then, you'd be happy to meet with them to hear their ideas, to try and work on ideas for volunteers, things like that. You'd be happy to take their ideas, and if you can, work them into your plans for the future, you'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, we've been. I think we have actually, before this meeting, we were trying to get a meeting in place. Again, as it has been pointed out, that they're a little bit disconnected themselves at the moment, which comes back to my point that running a park, you need massive cohesion. You can't start falling out before you've even bought it. It's really important that everyone is managed and moving in the same direction. So we weren't sure who we were meeting, but I think there is potentially another suggestion. So yes, absolutely. Subject to knowing who exactly we're meeting, definitely.
Thank you. Councillor Loughman and then Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I much appreciate your presentation and putting some facts on the table that I think were good to hear, or at least good to take note of. I have been guilty many years ago, as a much younger man, of taking education groups, cycling and such like things, and we weren't accused of being vandals or anything. We thoroughly enjoyed it, and the children loved it. And the testimony of all the people speaking tonight reveals how really important this is. I've always been interested in tourism and as a path of economic regeneration. And it seems to me, I've always had this sort of dream where some of the mining, ex-mining areas like outside of Doncaster that attract tens and tens of thousands of visitors can come and seem to be sustainable. And it's been a tragic thing to see some of the failures, especially the Hadlow College disaster in the past. I'm going to come back to what the Chair was saying, because it seems to me that you've indicated an interesting model outside of pure sale. And I'm interested in how collaboration, which Richard says, and the Chair's quoted, collaboration is the way forward. And that doesn't mean, I think, occasional meetings. I think collaboration needs to be more formal, taking the community with you and some of the ideas and expertise that they have. So I was kind of interested in how you defined forward partnership with community and collaboration, and hopefully all the spikes and tendrils that have come your way could be somewhat ameliorated by that form of transparency and way forward, and how you'd feel about that. Because one other thing I'm certain is that not only the value of the ecology that's there, but the value of the expertise that's within the community that's held there can be of significant benefit. And if we bring all our resources together, something different might emerge.
Yeah, spikes and barbs, I think, is probably right. But I think there's two things I would say. First and foremost, you cannot manage or run a situation like this on social media. It's just evil. It's absolutely evil. It's people sit at home, post things that are not useful, whereas they could just come to the park and meet Tyler, or email us, rather than just sticking something that is unhelpful online. I think you would be surprised how many people within the community we already talk to. We just don't happen to be talking to the people that may have presented tonight. You know, Natural England, who have a massive interest in this site, Kent Wildlife Trust, all of the schools, you know, who we meet regularly and who I know well, all of the sports clubs. You'd be amazed at the amount of engagement that is going on. We've met Natural England down there, or Richard Taylor-Jones has met Natural England down there quite a lot, and because of social media, it's easy to just focus on this one bit that hasn't got anything nice to say, and you forget the enormous amount of people who are younger than me, and I think that's probably a good thing. I'm 51, but there are an enormous amount of young people, from zero, as you said, with your children, to young adults who are enjoying that park and who we get feedback when they use that park. I mean, the cycling down there at the moment is fantastic. You know, the bike project down there has come in, taken over the bikes, because that wasn't our expertise at all, and they're now offering lessons to kids for free under the age of 8. You know, and it's those people that we need to engage with, as well as just the people that want to save the ecology. We want to save the ecology. Some of it might have to get harmed to be able to have progress, but the gap or the improvement from 2019 to now almost gives us that headroom to actually probably, yes, do something, but then we know we can go again, and we've proven that we can create habitats on the park that then improve that biodiversity. So yes, we're more than willing to talk to anybody. I mean, I'll talk to anybody. You can probably tell I'm not that shy, but it needs to be sensible, and people need to come with considered, informed opinions. You know, as I've said, we've spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds on trained, qualified ecologists. We've spent thousands and thousands of pounds on people like the council when we make applications to interrogate those reports. It's not just us. So we do engage. We probably could do a lot better with engaging with friends of Betshanger, but that is definitely a two-way street. So we would gladly meet them with the council, definitely, no problem at all.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Williams and then Councillor Richardson.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm interested in the visitor centre. Vacant possession, have I seen that in your sales brochure? I'm particularly interested in the museum. If you do get other investors, what's likely to happen to the visitor centre and to the museum?
So the museum, I'm a trustee of the Mining Museum as well as various other hats. So I'm regularly at the board meetings with Jim. So and this is, again, when you look into the detail, everyone calms down. The museum has a lease on that, so you can't get rid of them. If we were to sell the park, which is extremely unlikely for all the reasons that I've said, that lease is noted on land registry, and the miners have a legal right to be there. I can't remember the exact term now, but it's a long time, isn't it? And Jim will tell you I'm very into the museum being at the park. Probably can't say more than that, but we work very hard, and we know that when the park is busy, the usage of the museum is a lot greater. That's why we were trying to get more people in through the various uses that we applied for, because once you get people coming in to stay in a hotel or to surf, they will go into that mining museum whilst they're there, which we found, I mean, Jim, when we're holding events, you know, you get as many as 60, 70 people going into the museum, and it's free, so they do need all the support, and we do help them. I mean, we built it for them. I don't know anyone else that would have built it. Hadlow failed miserably. They did get funding from National Lottery as well, but they couldn't spend it. They had to have someone to pay to build it for them. No one else would have built it at cost like we did. So yeah, we have a very good relationship with the miners, but they are safe. So yeah, I think the phrase vacant possession gets thrown around and can mean many different things, but that will remain in place. The visitor centre in general, we use it now for, I mean, the miners use it for education. We use it for weddings. Again, these are things that don't get mentioned. Wakes occasionally, yeah, all sorts of corporate events. Yeah, and everyone absolutely loves it. These are things that people forget happen at the park. It's not just about the lizard orchids. It's not just about the various populations. It's about all of those uses that bring people in, that then in turn get to go to the mining museum as well. So, and play with the goats, and the kids can cycle, and you know, any number of other things. So, yeah, it's just diversification, as we said. We're just trying to find different uses for it. But the wedding market is pretty much dead at the moment because no one's got any money to have an expensive wedding. So we are struggling to get people through the door, but it's a space that will stay and be available. Whether it's available always for the things that it is right now, I don't know, but the mining museum definitely will be.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Hugh and Tyler, for coming down and everyone speaking. Going back to the actual, we're trying to find out the viability and long-term sustainability of Betsanger Park, and you can understand in my eyes, and everyone, I think, some members of the public, is the uncertainty that's there at the moment with it. Are you selling? Are you getting investors? And what's actually going to happen to the park? And I think that's what people are worrying about. When do you think this exercise that Quinn Estates are going through will stop, when you suddenly turn around and say we got investment, or we got a buyer? Because it's now been what, 4 months it's been up in the market for now, about that, just about, it's 4 months down the line and we really haven't heard anything. Can you just sort of give us some insight on how far the Quinn Estates are expected to go with this exercise? And if you don't get investments, you don't have a buyer, what's the plan beyond that?
I think it's quite hard to give any great detail. And you said that people are terrified and there's lots of uncertainty. Nobody's more terrified and uncertain than me. It's terrifying to try and keep this thing open, and it's very difficult to give guarantees, especially in the world at the moment, as you know, for many number of reasons. That there is no certainty internationally, let alone locally. So I would imagine in a few months we'll have a very, 3 months we'll have a very good idea of where we are in terms of what we might do moving forwards. But when I've presented previously to the council and various people, there is a very much a sort of a short-term, medium-term, long-term problem. The short term really is just keeping the gates open, and that in itself is very difficult. Medium term, we'll probably be getting some different types of uses. Whether we need planning for them or not, that's for us to discuss with the council. We don't know. But fundamentally, getting more people in the park, spending money, paying for parking, which I always find hilarious that people get annoyed about having to pay for parking when they can use the park for free. But that's it. You need to get that usage up. So we need to get more usage in there. And then long term, really, it comes down to that sort of district wide, where does Deal go and how can we form part of that? Because now we own the lakes next door as well. It's an amazing resource that really, for decades can actually help the development in and around Deal if it's managed correctly. So whether we get investment or not, that's still the same plan. It's just what we will be able to do and what we can afford to do moving forwards. But I would think I would have a much better idea of how we are going to fund it moving forward and with whom in the next 3 months. How much of that I can share, I'm not entirely sure, but yes.
Okay, I've got Councillor Mamjan and then Councillor Parks and then Councillor Vincent. And as we're going back round now, I think we'll start to finish up. So Mamjan, Parks, Vincent.
Thank you, Chair. 3 years ago, I didn't know anything about ecology, but I've done a little bit of homework. But what I recall, and something, I might not make sense, but it's because it doesn't make sense in my head. When we had the planning permission, where you got the permission to proceed, it was mentioned that you would repatriate or move, some of that biodiversity to your 24-acre, 25-acre site somewhere in Eastry, brown site that you had, and it was presented quite credibly until somebody said that, well, turtle doves go wherever the food is. And I recall still, because it stuck with me, our environmental officer from Dover District Council said, well, it's not quite like that. But my question is, you have said that the biodiversity has increased. Does that mean that the increase as well, you still will continue moving the biodiversity we have, or what's going to happen to the increase? What are the plans?
Was more in that that is explained easily. The Hamel Field, which I think we call onion beds, is linked to the implementation of the hotel and the Sea Hive, as was, and I've seen criticism about the warden. The warden was going to be put in place if the hotel and the Sea Hive were delivered. So those things, including there's another, I can't remember how many acres on the side of Betshanger Park that we were going to buy for the turtle doves. So if the hotel and Sea Hive don't come forwards, those things won't come forwards either, because they were to mitigate the impacts of the hotel and the Sea Hive. That said, the turtle dove population
It's back this year.
is doing well, yeah, because we feed them. We feed them. I don't know anyone else that feeds them, considering how loved they are by many. But we feed them and we survey them, and they can fly away, and they don't. They appear to come back. Yeah. So anything that was linked to the Sea Hive and the hotel won't happen unless we deliver the Sea Hive and the hotel. And that actually includes an obligation we had that we currently don't have to keep the park open. That was why it was a good thing for Dover, a good thing for the community, in that in the Section 106 agreements for the hotel and the Sea Hive, there was an obligation to allow people to enter that park for free other than parking and events. So if we had delivered that on the 9% of the area of the park, that permanent obligation to allow people into that park would have been retained. As it sits right now, we can go and close the gates tomorrow morning and never let anyone in other than the miners. That's the loss of not delivering that hotel and that surf lagoon. That error, potentially by Hadlow, and I think probably KCC at the time, was being rectified with these planning permissions for the hotel and the Sea Hive. And now, because they're not happening, the community access is lost. The permanent community access, unless it's by goodwill, which at the moment it is.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parks.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. One for Democratic Services. In the interest of fulfilling the council resolution, what might we be able to ask Hugh back in 3 months' time, or 4 months' time, perhaps, once you have a better idea of what's going on with the sale or otherwise? And secondly, a question for Hugh. There was some talk going on around the site being a SSSI. Obviously, you've said in your presentation there that since you took over the site, the biodiversity's increased, or there's been a net increase, at least. And you've also said that you've had regular conversations with Natural England over the time you've been there. As far as I'm aware, it's Natural England that adjudicates on these things. Have they mentioned at any point whether the site might be getting close to the threshold of what an SSSI might be? I have to say I don't fully understand what the thresholds are, so I don't know. And secondly, if it were to be designated one, how significantly would that limit the existing permissions that it has? Would they be negated? Would those permissions cease to exist?
Well, I must admit, I don't meet Natural England that regularly. I have met them on a couple of occasions. They're currently not interested in designating it as a triple SI. We actually have a triple SI at the lakes, so it's not something that particularly terrifies me. It depends why it's designated more than anything else, and which particular areas are designated. The Natural England process, I think, is probably so complicated they don't necessarily want to go down it, especially considering that they're seeing that we are protecting it on its own. And the two planning permissions are the two planning permissions. They're legal documents, so we'd be able to implement them, I believe, regardless of whether it was allocated or not. And you can get planning in a triple SI. It's just obviously a higher bar. And trust me, the bar has been set pretty high by Natural England anyway. Hence, they gave us the permissions for 7 years, because they said, look, you've got a high bar here. You better have 7 years to try and solve this rather than just the normal 3. So, yeah, we do liaise with them quite regularly and, amicably.
And then I'll just bring Rebecca in to answer Councillor Parks' first part.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously, Queen Estates, the country park, they're not anyone we can compel to attend. They have very kindly come in to have this discussion. They didn't have to, but they have very kindly done so, which I think obviously we're all very thankful of. So I think the question really on that is to them. Are they happy to come back at a future point, whether it be 3, 6, whatever months time to talk further? If they are, then great, we can look to schedule something in.
Yeah, of course. You've seen me in this chamber before. I'm not against coming in. I'd rather not, I must admit. But obviously, it's quite helpful. And I present and talk to various parts of the council quite often, and more than willing to have meetings outside of this forum, because sometimes it can be really useful. That's probably more useful than sat in a chamber talking about it. Sometimes sat around or even meeting on site. I feel quite bad actually. Tyler's not said anything. It's okay. I've dominated all. She's got all the facts about the park, and I sat here and chatted. But fundamentally, we do appreciate, and it may not come across that way, but we do appreciate how much people love that park. I don't think when we bought it, we had any idea of the level of involvement, despite living locally. I live in Ash, so it's not as if we were, out of town. But it has come at a bit of a shock. But again, the resentment, considering what we've achieved on that park, has come as a bit of a shock as well. But we're used to it. We do this. We're used to objectors. And hopefully, I really hope, and I said I'm more into the financial sustainability of this park than anyone else in this room. I think we can do it, but we're going to need some help, and that's what we've had meetings with the council about historically. It wasn't until we closed that rear gate that all of a sudden everyone started to want to speak to us. But trust me, it's been a valuable community asset since we bought it in 2019. No one wanted to talk to us. So I think to a certain extent, I can turn it on its head and say that as much as we appreciate it and the people that use it appreciate it, I think the council possibly helping us, as you are at the moment doing with various things, will be yourselves included, with the good news stories that we have at that park. Get it out there. When kid learns to ride a bike for the first time, repost it. When we have an event that gets thousands of people, post it. When the pygmy goats make a kid smile, post it. Help share the good news rather than just the bad news would be really useful as councillors.
Well, I absolutely love these meetings. I didn't realise other people didn't, but that's okay. Hugh, never mind.
Not my happy place.
Yeah, fine. Councillor Vincent, and then I think we'll probably look to wrap this item up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Actually, the reason I wanted to speak again was to wrap the item up. And so I'm grateful to Councillor Parks for suggesting that we might have Hugh back again in front of the committee. I've got 2 actual specific proposals, and I just wanted to ask Rebecca if she wouldn't mind just clarifying the procedure for kind of the options we've got. So, as we've just heard, this issue really got particular focus after the closure of the Collier's Gate, which resulted in the motion that I brought forward going to council, hence the referral of this issue around the sustainability and long-term viability of the park being discussed this evening. Now, what I'd be grateful for, Rebecca, is if you could just sort of explain what the kind of obligations are on the committee, or like options for the committee, what next steps there are, because I think I would hate for this to be the end of the discussion. There's clearly a need for us as a council, through whichever bits of it are involved, to make sure that there's a success of it. So I have 2 proposals, but if you wouldn't mind explaining that, I'd be grateful.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the motion, it doesn't have set in the motion a specific outcome beyond the Scrutiny Committee to obviously deal with the aspect put in there. So I would suggest really your options are sort of threefold. One is to say thank you and end the process here. The other is to, as Councillor Park suggested, to sort of schedule a follow-up. Other options would be to recommend to either back to the council or to cabinet a particular course of action that the Scrutiny Committee can't take that another body could. So that's probably your sort of 3 broad actions.
Good. I'm glad that my reading of the rules is the same as yours, Rebecca. So there are two specific things in there which I think I'd like us to do. I'd propose to the committee. One is about effectively continuing the discussion and the role of overview and scrutiny. So we have powers to invite outside bodies to come and talk to us, hence the discussion this evening. We could invite back any groups we chose, Hugh or others, to come and speak to us at some point in the future. But given the sort of iterative process of the kind of discussions around new investment, sale, future plans, I wonder whether or not it might be a more nimble approach for us to use one of the options within the Constitution, which is to set up a working group on this with perhaps a smaller cohort of members from this committee who can potentially revisit this on a slightly more frequent basis, rather than coming back sort of for a big debate. The advantage of that is that working groups can co-opt non-members onto those groups. So it could be that we have interested parties come along to join that working group, even though they might not be able to vote on the things that the working group does. And then we could schedule those meetings at an appropriate moment in the future, rather than having the rigorous sort of preset dates which are within the annual schedule of meetings. So that's I guess my first proposal for us to keep an eye on this at the appropriate juncture, rather than fixing in time now. And the second thing I think is that clearly overview and scrutiny powers that all local authorities have, they're not the same as the council in the whole. We have an executive model here, and as Rebecca has said, I think we can make a recommendation to cabinet if we wish. And the thing that I think I hear loud and clear is the sort of open-mindedness about help, whether it be from local interested parties, or I think to an extent from us. Now we've got a good track record as a council of working with partners on regenerating difficult sites within the district, and have access to a number of funding streams that are specifically intended for regeneration that come from central government. And I wonder whether or not a recommendation from this committee should be for cabinet to work directly with the owners of the country park to explore potential avenues where we could use our powers and opportunities as a council to influence the future viability and sustainability of the park through grant funding or whatever other means might exist. Now we can't do that as the committee, but obviously the executive of the council have got greater discretion on what they might do, and can use the kind of the officers of the council as they sort of see appropriate to work on some of that stuff. So they're my 2 proposals, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Are you seconding, Councillor Friend? Yep. Okay, so Councillor Friend is seconding those. Any other comments to make, or should we ask Rebecca to? Do you want to just read them back to make sure that we're clear on what we're voting on?
Thank you, Chair. So the first recommendation was to set up a working group. For this would be a scrutiny working group. I'd suggest that probably we want something to come back to the next scheduled meeting on that, because we're going to need to look at in effect creating a sort of task and finish group if members agree. So obviously agreeing tonight if members wish to, but we'd need to do a little bit of follow-up work on that to identify exactly what the remit is, who you wanted to potentially co-opt from external, and the other important question is the resourcing for it. Obviously, Scrutiny can't direct resources in terms of if you need a wider sort of pool of resourcing. So we probably need to exactly sort of bottom out where the working group needs to sort of look and engage. The recommendation to Cabinet is to obviously to work with Betsanger Country Parks owners to see if they can influence the viability and sustainability long term of the park through grant funding or other measures. That was just a sort of summary of the wording there that Councillor Vincent used, but I think it covers the key points.
Are you confident that covers the points that you made, Councillor Vincent?
Yeah, absolutely right. That's fine. Okay. Thank you.
So that's been proposed and seconded then. So a scrutiny working group and the proposal to Cabinet to explore other options. Are we happy with that then? All those in favour? All those against? And any abstentions? Okay. Yep, thank you very much. That's carried. Okay, so thank you very much, Hugh and Tyler, for coming along. Thank you very much for all of those people that spoke on this item. Just for everyone's reference, the next item will be excluding the press and public. So we're just going to take a short break to allow everyone to file out because we'll be excluding you in a minute anyway. That's not because we don't like you or anything like that. That is just a formality. So thank you very much for everyone that's attended. We'll just take a short break now. Item 7 then, exclusion of the press and public. So I'll propose that we exclude the press and public. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Friend. All those in favour of excluding the press and public? Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, a resolution has been passed to exclude the press and public. I would like to thank all those that have taken the time to watch the public part of the meeting. Please could I ask Democratic Services to end the meeting broadcast and confirm when this has been done?